So I found when I left the organization, and I don't know if you had this experience too, I tried to start dating like an adult, and I didn't really have all the tools that I needed.
I didn't have any of the tools.
It was I didn't have any of the tools. You're right. Uh, I just didn't know how to, and I when I was in the organization, as you know, I was married when I was 24. Before that, when I was 20, I was engaged for a brief time, and then that broke that off, and then got engaged again when I was 23, and then married at 24. And Rebecca, who was on this channel, was just turned 20 when we got married.
Yeah.
So crazy. I mean, I guess it was not just. She was about 20 and a half, but if you're counting halves, you're too young.
Right.
Uh, I'm 20 and a half. Okay. um, it was really a strange experience then after being married for so long and then never learning how to date. Well, date like a worldly person.
Right.
Have you had that? What kind of experience did you have there too?
Well, last week we talked about, when we last recorded, about the importance of getting to know yourself, because you don't even know yourself. So that carries over to when you're trying to date, when you're trying to maybe find someone that has similar interests to you. You may not know what you're interested in, or you may not know what activity you would like to do for a date. I mean, even something as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just so, I was speaking with a friend of mine who was dating someone, and they'd been dating for about 4 months, and then he said, "I love you," and because he thought he was holding off, but he was fresh out of the organization. He thought he was holding off, and the girl's like, the woman was, "Oh, I didn't know that's where you were."
Yeah,
It was just so surprising.
that's rough.
It's pretty rough. But more to specifics, I remember after I was just coming out of the organization and getting divorced and everything. Anybody's been kind of emotionally shaken after that. Those either one of those experiences. But I started dating someone, and I found that I liked her, and then I wanted her to feel liked as much as absolutely possible. And I started doing the love bombing that JWs do to get people to go to the meetings. Now, I wasn't trying to get her to go to the meetings, but it was just, everything was just way, way too much. And she was like, "Okay, buddy."
I think it's important for people to understand, inside the JW organization, there's no such thing as recreational dating or taking it slow. Dating, by their own statements in their publication, dating is done with a specific objective, and that is identifying your marriage mate. So you're not allowed to start dating, or it's frowned on to start dating, until you are at least physically old enough to marry. So for most people, they start dating at 18. So you feel like you have no time to waste. You don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste their time. And
I mean, everybody's supposed to live forever, but nobody has
time. And if you are a sister, sisters outnumber brothers quite a bit. That's a common joke among JWs, that there's always tons of eligible sisters and hardly any eligible brothers. So when you're a woman, you, number one, probably don't have much of an education beyond high school. You may or may not have a marketable skill to support yourself if you were to stay single. And then for a lot of sisters that pioneer, they need a second income to help them pioneer. So if you do have a brother in mind, you're in a hurry.
And JW, brother and sister, obviously, just for anybody, it's just, that's what they call everybody. So you go, "Oh, I have a brother in mind." It sounds kind of weird.
Oh, yeah. Spiritual brother, sorry.
Are you looking to date your brother? Or no, it's a weird term they use.
Yes. Okay, so yes, they're referring to spiritual brothers or sisters inside your congregation. So if you do have someone in
Right.
mind, you just feel the pressure, the pressure, the pressure. And of course, that leads to young people like jumping into marriage and potentially ignoring a lot of red flags. And that's why a lot of JW marriages struggle so much, because you're not ready, they're not ready, you may not really know who you're marrying. Yeah, it sucks.
Exactly. And there's the because you don't look at red flags, you also, in the JW organization, you're supposed to kind of tuck imperfections away. If you see somebody has something, they do something that's frustrating to you, or a red flag, you're supposed to freely forgive and then kind of just sweep things under the rug. And then when you do that, when you're dating someone, all these red flags.
When you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags.
It's kind of weird. You always tuck away those things because you're supposed to freely forgive your brothers and sisters. And don't worry, they'll be perfect in the new system, so it won't matter. But right now, you're getting married, you're 20 to 25 years old, maybe even younger, and you're going to have problems when you have just been sweeping all those things under the rug.
Yeah. I feel like when you're entering the dating realm, there's so much attention given to like box checking as far as picking who you're going to date or who you're going to potentially marry. And those boxes are things like, how much time does your potential marriage mate spend in the ministry? How many Bible studies? And these are all questions, let me clarify, that were asked to me when I started dating my first husband. How much time do they spend in the ministry? Do they have any responsibilities in the congregation? Have they ever been in trouble? Have they ever been reproved, disfellowshipped, reprimanded, anything like that in their congregation? No one, not one time, ever asked me, have they ever been verbally abusive to you? Have they ever purposely humiliated you in front of other people? Have they ever been in trouble with the law, the police? Do they show any inclinations towards substance abuse? And I'm not saying my first husband had any of those problems, but no one asked me those types of questions. All the questions.
They're questions that should have been asked.
Of course. Yeah. All the questions revolved around their role or their commitment to the organization, and very little about who are they as a person? What is the substance of their character, regardless of religion?
Right. Right. It's very strange. Those two combinations of only looking at spiritual qualifications and then also freely forgive and sweep everything under, between those two things right there, if you get married to somebody that actually works out with you and you're happy, it is sheer luck.
Well, and I feel like
because you weren't also doing any of the analysis that you're supposed to. Go ahead.
And I feel like that can also set you up for failure when you start dating outside of the organization, because if you're used to sweeping things under the rug or ignoring things, and you go into this mindset, well, we're all imperfect, we're all just, doing the best that we can, and you think that it's normal to like labor under this invisible cloud of anxiety, then you can put yourself in dangerous situations or end up wasting your time, even if it's not necessarily in a dangerous situation, but in just one that's not right for you in the long run, wasting your time and theirs.
Well, I've seen people like my parents who, by all rights, should have been divorced years ago. And it's not because of the organization that they're doing well, but they think, oh, well, we did things Jehovah's way, so anyone can do things Jehovah's way, or what they mean is the governing body's way, and things will work out for them because they worked out for us. But my parents care about each other so much. That's what's at the core of it. They're not suppressing, being mean to each other. They're not doing any of that. I saw my dad raise his voice, and this is one thing that I think I just admire them so much. He raised his voice slightly. He was actually barely terse, slightly curt. I will say, with my mother, and she was like, oh, and it hurt her feelings, and he said, oh, I'm so sorry. It was in West Virginia. It was when we lived very close to each other, and we're moving, and there's something with the books, they were in the wrong order or something, I don't know. And it's so funny to me that, first of all, they're great together. They love each other so much, and I think they're brilliant partners. But that is not because of the organization. It's because they're both sweet people who happen to be extremely compatible.
Right.
And lucked out that they got married crazy young and then happened to be extremely compatible. I will say that getting married and the organization's notion of you have to stay married does help some people get through a rough patch that's just a rough patch that they might have abandoned otherwise. But the vast majority, it just keeps people stuck in loveless relationships that are even abusive. And so I see, you can see my distraction going here, but the thing is that my parents, as an example, they would be just as, or even better off without the organization because they happen to be very well-suited people. And then they turn around and imply that, well, do things God's way and everything will be blissful. And that's just not the way it works when it comes to the governing body's way, excuse me.
Right. Yeah, relationship strain.
And,
go ahead.
no, go ahead. You're on the same topic. I was going to shift. Go ahead.
I was just going to say relationship strain, whether it's the beginning of a relationship or a more established relationship, is very real within the organization because whereas someone on the outside, maybe if they needed someone to talk to, they might see a therapist or a marriage counselor. On the inside of the organization, if you are struggling in your marriage, your only option is to either approach the elders, which no one wants to do. I'd rather have an arm chewed off than go to the elders about my marriage. Or to just pray about it. The Band-Aid solution for everything. Just pray about it. Just pray about it. I saw a cartoon that I really loved, and it's a girl on a dock or a pier, and she's yelling down into the water, and from the surface of the water, you just see someone's hand like breaking the surface, reaching for help, and she shouts down, "Have you prayed about it?" And that's kind of how it feels.
Because there's no practical resolutions for those issues. It's just pray about it and wait on Jehovah to fix your problems in the future and continue to deal with, in many cases we've heard, abusive partners, usually often the husband. But,
Sure.
Some poor woman is just waiting on Jehovah because that's what the organization told them to.
Well, and they act like physical abuse is the only kind that's detrimental to you. Like verbal and emotional and mental abuse, well, sorry, just suck it up, sister.
And even though it is kind of, exactly, yeah, sorry, my delay screwed me up there a little bit. And even though this does veer a bit into marriage, it speaks to compatibility. And there are other types of compatibility that, in my opinion, should be tested. And this may be something that maybe you don't agree with. I don't really know. We haven't really talked about this. This is not just for ridiculous. This isn't just for sensationalized reasons, but there are reasons I think that it's a good idea to have sex before marriage. You can find out if there's serious incompatibilities, and there certainly can be many. Just different things that just are physically or emotionally, just your emotional makeup, your desires, their desires, or even just physical issues that come up that aren't compatible with another person. And you're not going to know that just by sitting at Starbucks and being chaperoned by your little sister as a Jehovah's Witness would.
Oh, the chaperone.
And there are certain, I see how those things developed in the past. If you there was no contraception, there were no ways to keep from getting STDs. So certainly it became very important to save that until you had a committed relationship, and a woman that was at risk of being pregnant would be cared for because he'd be financially and legally obligated, even beyond if he just didn't give a damn. But in today's modern world, I don't think that applies. I think that solves those problems. We have contraception. We have that if there's two consenting adults that want to have sex, it's, in my opinion, a good idea before marriage or before, commitment of like moving in together or something, because then you're going to know, like I said, if they are compatible, and that's a very real, actually important area of a relationship, an intimate relationship.
Sure, that is a critical part of all relationships. I also think.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
I also shut up. I also think if JW parents could just normalize the concept of dating earlier, it wouldn't be this pedal to the metal process when you're actually able to start that part of your life. I think it's so funny when I hear my grandkids talk about their like boyfriend or girlfriend at school. Now, they're like, 12. Obviously, it's not a boyfriend or girlfriend, but it's someone that they think of in a, I think you're cute, I'm sweet on you type of way. But when we were kids, even that wasn't allowed.
At recess.
What's that?
Oh, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold hands at recess. And absolutely, it was not allowed.
Not at all. And 12, 13, 14, I mean, I could never say I had a boyfriend. And my parents were very clear, like, you won't have a boyfriend until you're old enough to marry. And then you can start that whole process. So dating before you were able to marry was like so taboo that when you are, old enough to start dating, like I said before, you just feel like there's no time to waste and you just rush into something that you may or may not be ready for.
Right, and dating as in the dating sense of like what a 12 or 13-year-old does when they're at recess holding hands. It's it can be such a very innocent thing, and especially if kids know what boundaries to set, and parents teach them. I remember I wouldn't get the nerve up to I had such a crush on this girl Kim. I loved her, and we would sneak holding hands sometimes, and then oh no, nobody saw us, and it was so innocent. It's not any danger of anything really detrimental happening, and you don't want 13-year-olds having sex. Obviously, none of that should be happening. But there's certainly it didn't. It just made me not. My parents just said no, don't talk to her at all, and that just made me not develop social skills, and a very innocent, perfectly fine thing was just kind of repressed, and I think it was detrimental, I think.
Just one more thing that makes the JW childhood so difficult, because then these activities, like you said, holding hands or, hanging out with your boyfriend or girlfriend during recess at school, they just give you such a sense of anxiety because it's normal, but it's not allowed. And it's so inconsequential in the long run, in the big picture. So I just always get such a kick out of hearing the kids say, oh, my boyfriend, Billy, he wrote me a note in class today. And I just think it's so cute.
And I think to that point, a tag onto that is that, and this may be controversial because I know this goes, back and forth, teaching kids about contraception. If they have no idea how that works, then there's certainly a great deal more risk of something going wrong.
Sure.
And I don't have kids, so I will shut all the way up when it comes to like how to raise kids. But it does seem that making it taboo can really, it can really, they don't even understand what boundaries shouldn't be crossed. Because I had no idea about sex when I was a kid. I had no idea.
Right.
This was the sex education that I got. My mom found in my backpack that was from my 6th grade, cubbyhole, I had this little brochure that explained when you're going to get hair where, and had little diagrams that were perfectly innocent, and it was published by Always, the panty liner company. had a little Always logo on the outside, and she looks through it, and this was the sex ed that I got. She says, okay, here you go. Now, you read that over, and if you have any questions, get back to your father and I. As you just, like one of those nuns in the Blues Brothers, just floated
faded
away. I was like, yeah, I'm like, where'd she go?
Now you know all you need to know.
And it was just, now all I knew then was that, that I would, that I'd get more hair. And I hardly have, as you can tell. So that didn't come true. But it was just so difficult to understand, like, okay, how do things work? What shouldn't I be doing? What should I be doing? What's okay? And, it was just confusing. And in fact, all that time of learning how to be social could have been well spent with proper boundaries and,
Sure.
and obviously supervision. I just set 2 14-year-olds in a room. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's something.
That's my
It's
rant.
the Wild West for JW dating.
It was nuts. The ideas, I don't think I'll say them on this channel, but the notions in my 12-year-old head of how sex actually worked, I was like, that seems terrifying. I had no idea how it worked. And then that kind of just launched into, I obviously figured it out in terms of just culturally, but got zero direction on that sort of thing. And so, sex and dating, it seems like that should be something that, if it talks about it early enough, that your parents are comfortable talking to you about it. And, I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. And
That's what she said.
when you're on the outside, I just remember I would see my friends, I was in my late 20s, and I would see my friends, most of them were in like healthy dating relationships. And I just remember asking, like, where did you meet your person? Like, how did you find your person?
Yeah.
And some of them, of course, had met through work or through mutual acquaintances. But I had a couple that met like online. And of course, this was 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I just remember thinking, like, that's outrageous. Like, there's just no way. And I remember asking her, like, all of them, not just the ones that met online, but I remember thinking, like, what do you guys have in common? And I was thinking, like, if you don't have your faith, like, anchoring you together or tying you together, like, what could you possibly talk about? What could you possibly do with your weekends if you're not pioneering together? And of course, they all looked at me like I was nuts. Right. And some of them did share faith.
Yeah.
Some of them did not. But she said, well, faith is wonderful if you share it, but that's not enough to base your whole relationship on. Like, it can't just be hinged on that. You have to truly be compatible. And I was like, yeah, that's something. That's a theory.
That's interesting. Based on my history, I tend to get, and because I was in the organization, like I was dating a girl when I was 20 and then into 21, and she was 18, then 19, and we were engaged by the time I was 21. And then for reasons, it wasn't, there were some problems, it wouldn't have worked. We broke up. And then the elders immediately pulled me from, because I was a ministerial servant at the time, which is a little just below elders, and then there's ministerial servants. This little higher up thing that you can do as a young male in the organization.
Your worker bee.
And they pulled me aside, exactly. And the lead elder, they called him a presiding overseer at the time. He said, "Hey, so I heard you broke off that engagement. We need to know the reason why." They're very, very in my business. They need to know the reason why, because technically, if I got engaged to someone, that's a promise to marry them. And the organization is so focused on that promise that many people go, "Oh, I guess I'm locked in now." And he had to know the answer, or I was looking at punishment within the congregation. He had to know the reason for the, and I explained it to him. He went, "Okay, all right." But that just shows how many people in the organization get engaged and then follow through with it, even though there are red flags, because there's consequences for not following through on an engagement.
Yeah. One thing I'll always love about my my mom, my mom and dad both. My mom, of course, is gone, but throughout my life, there was lots of things we didn't see eye to eye on, and even now with my dad, we still don't. But I'll never forget. It was the day of my wedding in 2003. I had just turned 21, like two weeks prior. I was in my dressing room, and it was just me. Like my bridesmaids had left the room. It was just me.
Okay, so we had a little bit of a technical issue here at this point, so we're going to have to upload the second part of this episode later this week. But before you go, I want to let you know that we read every single comment. And this one right here was from Mike Gonzales. And he had so many interesting stories that he was kind enough to share with us. So we asked him to be on the podcast, and we recorded it a few days ago. He talks about everything from being treated like an outcast when he was 23 years old and not yet married. You know, how Jehovah's Witnesses view single people, even though it's supposed to be good, the blessing. But he also talks about going to Bethel headquarters and working in his cleaning job and some of the eyebrow-raising contents of the trash that he would collect from the higher-ups rooms at Bethel. Very interesting conversation. He had a lot more to share, and we're going to be uploading that this week as well. So please hit the notification bell and like and subscribe. We sure do appreciate it. Thanks so much.